Welcome to the day after talking Duck Sports. We are here about the football game that happened this weekend. We had Oregon and Michigan. Oregon goes to the big house and handles Michigan. I thought this game was a little closer until the fourth quarter than the score really showed. But Oregon came out and does what Oregon does. In the first half, Oregon is a buzzsaw, jumps out to a big lead. And then as the game goes on, the other teams catch up and think they have a chance. And if we look at the way the score mapped out here, is Oregon scores 7 in the first quarter, Michigan scores 7 in the first quarter off of a fumbled punt, and then Oregon, goes and does 3 straight, gets 21 points, scores right at the end of the half. Michigan gets a field goal, and Oregon takes a 28-10 lead into halftime. After the half, Oregon struggles, gets 3 points right at the very end of the third quarter, but they had 2 other drives that fizzled out and didn't get any points. Michigan comes down and scores, and so the game gets a little closer where now it's 31-17. And then at 31-17, Michigan comes down and they're inside the red zone, go for it on fourth down, turn the ball over on downs. And then Oregon drives down the field and scores with 30 seconds left, putting a punctuation on this game. A little out of character for the final score. Most of the time teams just kneel down, but I think the rumor is that the Michigan coach sent Dan Lanning a message saying you better bring your A game. That might have upset Dan Lanning a little bit, and he might have wanted to punctuate that. But who knows what that score is about? Dan Lanning won't ever really talk about it, I doubt. We'll probably never know. That's just kind of my take on it. But let's just break down some of these stats here. So Oregon has 23 first down to Michigan's 11. Third down efficiency, 10 of 15, 4 of 12. Fourth downs, Oregon didn't go for it. Michigan was 0 for 1, like I said. Rushing yards, Oregon does 176 against Michigan is supposed to have one of the best run defenses in the league. So getting almost 200 yards is pretty good there. And then Oregon holding Michigan to 105 rushing yards. Oregon's passing 294 to Michigan, which isn't really a passing team anyway, to 165. Total yards per game, Oregon's at 470, pushing 500, and they hold Michigan under 300 yards. And as much as these stats are one-sided, like I said, the game felt like it could have got a lot closer, especially with Michigan having the momentum there. If they could have scored on that fourth down play, that would have changed the complexion of the end of this game. And again, Oregon struggles in the second half. No interceptions thrown by either team. Had a punting average. Let's see. Penalty yards. Michigan had 0 penalties last game. They had 5 this game, and I think that was the pressure that Oregon was putting on them. Oregon had 2 penalties for 10 yards. Oregon had a fumble lost, and Michigan had a fumble but didn't lose the ball. Oregon, again, maintains time possession, 32-28 to 27. And, So Oregon is struggling a bit. And let's take a look at this stat here. If we can see this one. There we go. All right, let me look that up. Okay. Through 10 weeks, this is Oregon's third and fourth quarter point totals. Week 1, Oregon can't score in the third quarter. They get 10 in the fourth. Week 2, they score 13 in the third, 10 in the fourth. Week 3, 10 in the third, 17 in the fourth, and then the Big 10 starts, and everything just goes downhill from there. And I'm not even really saying that the teams got better per se, because this includes like Purdue and some of those, right? But it doesn't matter who. It's just you go week 4, Oregon goose eggs in the third, scores 6 in the fourth. Week 5, goose egg in the third, 6 in the fourth. Week 6 gets a field goal in the third and a touchdown in the fourth. Week 7, goose egg and then 10. Week 8, goose egg and then 14. Week 9, goose egg and then 3. And week 10, 3 points in the third and then a touchdown. And that's not showing, especially that middle 8. Oregon is not winning that middle 8 like Dan Lanning preaches. And Oregon's offense is really struggling in the second half compared to the first half. So if we look at this, this is 2.9 points per third quarter and 9 points per fourth quarter. That's their average over 10 games. And then if you look at the Big 10, Oregon is averaging 1 point in the third quarter, and then they're averaging 8.8 in the fourth quarter. That's just not good. You score over the last 6 games. You score 6 total points in the third quarter. I don't know, man. That's a struggle. But then you turn around and your average victory margin is 17.6 points overall. So you're winning games by an average of 17 points, and you're not scoring in the second half. That means Oregon is really blitzing teams in the first half. And I think against a better matched team, if you can hold Oregon, or if you can have the lead in the first half or tied or be super close in the first half, you have to feel pretty good about your chances going into the second half with Oregon scoring struggles. Because out of all these games, there really hasn't been a game that they pulled Dylan Gabriel out in the third quarter, and it was all backups. Yeah, they may have slowed down the offense in the fourth quarter, but the third quarter, I guarantee they're not slowing down the offense, and Oregon is just struggling. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's maybe the halftime adjustments by the opposing team, and then Oregon's adjustments, or maybe they're not adjusting on offense and they're, because it's just worked in the first half. And I don't know. I'm not a coach, but this is a bad sign for Oregon as it goes on, because you get into the Big 10 title game, you get into the playoff, you can't have this goose egg or 3 points in the third quarter. That's going to come back to bite you. So Dan Lanning says it's not an issue, but it is clearly an issue, and they need to figure it out in the next 3 weeks, because it could come back to bite Oregon in the rear there. All right, so let's move on to the stats here. So Dylan Gabriel does what Dylan Gabriel does 23 of 34, 294 yards, 8.6, 1 TD, no interceptions. Losing Tez Johnson was a big hit early, and you can't just replace his production or his ability to get into the end zone. So I think that might have hurt this TD number. I'm thinking if Tez was in there, they probably would have at least got 2. But overall, Dylan Gabriel had a typical game for Dylan Gabriel. It was super efficient. I didn't really think that he put the ball in danger in this game. But again, Dylan shows that when he gets a little bit pressure and he gets on a run, he tends to overthrow those balls, and he needs to rein that in a little bit and hit some of those receivers while he's running. All right. So Jordan, only 3 rushers this week. Jordan James, 23 carries for 117 yards, 5.1 average, 1 TD. He came up a little lame there at one point. I hope it's nothing serious because, I mean, he did come back and play, but you never know if they had that taped up or what was going on with that. Hopefully he's okay. You have Noah Winnington with 11 carries, 36 yards, 3.3 average, and 2 TDs. I thought Noah, even though he didn't have like the big, huge run, I thought he was still pretty good yesterday. And like I said, Michigan is supposed to have one of the better run defenses. So for Oregon to put up 176 yards on the ground, that's pretty good. Of course, Dylan Gabriel had his 23-yard rushing TD. That was a great run by him. I don't even think he was touched all the way. And then we get down to the receiving. And you have Trayshawn Holden, who comes back and takes Tez's spot, gets some love, gets 6 receptions, 149 yards for 24.8 yard average. That guy just stepped up and produced. He had a 47-yard long. Justice Lowe continuing to show why everybody says he's the smartest guy in the locker room. Gets 6 catches, 45 yards, 7.5 average 15. I thought he played really well. Terrence Ferguson, good to see him back from surgery. 2 receptions, 34 yards, 17 average, long at 20. Kenyon Sadiq, 2 receptions, 32 yards, 16 average, 24 long. I thought they used Sadiq early, and then it seems like the offense went away from him. I don't know if the defense started to key on him, but he didn't have anything in the second half that I can remember. I think everything for him happened in the first half. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of thought that Dylan and Oregon needed to get the tight ends a little bit more involved than they did, since they were kind of keying on that. But I don't know. It was still overall a great game, and those two guys played really well. Evan Stewart, 6 catches, 16 yards, 5.3 average, 1 TD, 9-yard average. Again, making crucial catches when Oregon needed him. Evan Stewart stepped up to do that. Tez Johnson had his 1 catch for 11 yards. And then he, of course, got hurt. Now, from everything I've heard from people back home, from Instagram and all the other stuff, the fear is it's a broken collarbone. And if it's a broken collarbone, then he's probably done for the season. Maybe get back for a bowl game, but I don't see him playing any regular season games, so that's bad. But Dan always preaches next man up. Hopefully for Tez, it was a precautionary, no collarbone break. Hopefully maybe just a bruised shoulder, and they just figured they didn't need him for this game, and so they held him out. But when you come back in street clothes, that usually means that it's much more serious. So we have to wait and find out what that is. Hopefully it's not super serious, and hopefully we can see him back, because I don't think he has the ability to come back for another season. And it would be horrible for his fantastic season to end like it has, because he has just done supremely well. 64 receptions, 649 yards, 10 average. That's going to hurt. I'm going to miss that kind of production. So hopefully Tez's injury isn't as bad as what it looks, and hopefully he'll be back, but who knows? All right. So here's the standings. Or no, this is we want to look at the standings here. So we got Indiana, who, like I said, they're for real. They trailed for the first time this year, and then stormed back and still won by 35, 40 points or something like that. Indiana Hoosiers, first time at 9-0 and 6-0 in the Big 10. Oregon Ducks, their third time at 9-0 and 6-0 in the Big 10. Ohio State beats Penn State and takes that third spot away. So Buckeyes 7-1 and 4-1. And this, I don't think this eliminates Penn State from the playoff. Um, I think honestly the Big Ten gets 3 teams in to the playoff, and I think depending on what happens at the end of the year here, I see these 4 teams right here. But you never know what can happen. There's still games to play. Let's take a look at Oregon's schedule here going forward. So they play number 17th in the standings for the Big Ten. Maryland's struggling mightily this year. And then Wisconsin, I think they're 10th in the Big Ten right now. And then Washington, that I think maybe is number 8. So before I had Wisconsin as probably the biggest threat, and now I'm thinking that it might be Washington is the biggest threat. I think Oregon gets healthy and murders Maryland. I think they go to Wisconsin and do what they do. And then they have Washington at home, and there's no better game to get up for. So I hope Oregon goes up for that game. But first up is Maryland at home at Autzen Stadium. And it'll be interesting to see what the injury update for Tez is. Also, there was an offensive lineman. Man, I forgot his name, but he went down. So we'll have to look at the injury update to see how that affects a very thin offensive line for Oregon. So that could change some things and put some pressure on Oregon. All right, you got Indiana's remaining schedule. They play Michigan next week, so we get to see a common opponent there. But I don't see, because Michigan goes there, I don't see Indiana slowing down. I still think they're going to put up 40 points like they always do. And then the big game there is they got to go to Ohio State, and that will determine the second team in the playoffs. And then they got Purdue. You have Ohio State that plays Purdue, Northwestern, couple patsies, and then they get Indiana, and then of course Michigan and Ohio State is a rivalry game at the end of the year. Michigan has won 3 straight. It is at Ohio State this year. So that's a good thing for them. And so Indiana, I see Indiana beating Ohio State. I just think Ohio State hasn't shown that they can keep up in their offense, and I think Indiana's offense is just going to overwhelm Ohio State in that game. That's kind of the way I see it playing out. And so to get into the Big Ten playoff is whoever wins this game between Indiana and Ohio State is into the playoff. And Oregon, as long as they win 2 out of 3 here, Oregon is in the Big Ten playoff. And the reason that is because if Indiana wins or Indiana loses, Ohio State is the only one that plays a common opponent at the last one, and that is Washington. So as long as Oregon doesn't lose to Washington, then they didn't play Wisconsin and they didn't play Maryland. So as long as Oregon doesn't lose to as long as Oregon beats Washington, if they lost to Maryland or they lost to Wisconsin and still beat Washington, then they hold the tiebreaker. So that's kind of how that works. Is if Ohio State beats Indiana, then it doesn't matter. Oregon can lose 1 game to anyone. If Indiana beats Ohio State, then Oregon can lose 1 game to anyone and still get in because they hold the tiebreaker against Ohio State. So Oregon is super close to locking up that spot there for the Big 12 or Big 10 title game. And then we'll see again who they're going to play. I think it's going to be Indiana, which is a really good team. And then if we look at so Tuesday coming up is the very first playoff ranking. that playoff ranking is the only one that matters. And I think you're going to see Indiana way higher than the 13 ranking that they're holding right now. You have, I think, like 4 undefeated teams left, being Oregon, Indiana, Purdue, and Army. I think are the only 4 left undefeated teams. I think you'll probably see Army somewhere up there about 13 or 14. I think you see BYU probably somewhere around 6 or 7. I think you see Oregon and Indiana probably 1 and 3, maybe 1 and 4, but it'd be hard for people to put an undefeated Indiana team below some of these one-loss teams. But yeah, so Tuesday, make sure you go out and vote, and then check out the playoff committee's first playoff ranking for the 12-team playoff. Be very interesting to see. But with that, we're getting out of here today. Don't forget, on Monday, Oregon women's and men's basketball starts. So that'll be fun. That this time of year starts getting really busy. So with that, much love all, and we are out.